Okay, so we have now started recording. This is the Mindfulness Sessions finale, and we have the extraordinary and inspirational Janet Rice. Hey, Janet.
Hello, how are you, Morgan? Hello, everyone.
Super happy to be
Shucks.
here. My name is Morgan Fitzgerald, and I will be your host this evening. We have the lovely Janet Rice as our special guest this evening. Janet Rice is a senator within federal Australian government for the Greens Party. Janet, welcome. Thanks so much for coming. Before we get started, what I'm going to do is maybe just do an acknowledgement of country, and then we'll start with the questions. Okay, so we acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you very much everyone for letting me do that. So, Janet Rice, let's get the questions started, but maybe before we do that, tell us how you're going. How's life been for you?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I've had a good day today. I'm basically up and down sometimes. Struggling, but today's been a good day. I've just been out for a lovely walk in Footscray. And also, before I get going, I also want to acknowledge country and acknowledge the First Nations people, and if there are any who are with us here today, to acknowledge all traditional land owners all across the country, and indeed any First Nations peoples around the world, and to acknowledge here in Australia, this is always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Awesome. Thank you, Janet. Now, just as a heads up, before we get started, we have a lot of questions to get through that were asked via people on social media. Super glad for them. If anyone in the room actually wants to ask questions, they can submit these questions via the chat feature. So if you look down towards the bottom, near the middle of the screen, if you're on a laptop, you hit the chat button and type your question in, and we'll see if we can get to it towards the end. All right, so first question, tell us your name and what you do.
I'm Janet Rice and I'm human, but I'm a senator for the Greens and in the Parliament rather than in the government, but like you said. So I'm the Greens, been in the Senate for 6 years, and as a Green fighting against the government, it can be hard yards with our Conservative. Yes, let's just stop there. I won't use any more adjectives as to how I feel about the current government. But fighting for all good things, for sustainability, social justice, and for everybody to be respected.
And you know what? I'm super glad that you actually, sort of picked me up on that one, because you learn new things every day. And that's something through COVID-19 I have realised. I've learnt something new every single day. So thank you. All right, next question.
I'm the Green one more thing. I'm the Green spokesperson for LGBTIQ plus people and issues.
Great. And you did so well in the panel. We did a panel probably, how long ago was that? About 2 months ago?
2 months ago or so, yeah.
And your cake, your little description with the cake, oh my God, that was the coolest thing. I honestly saw you getting it out. I'm just like, what is she up to? You did so well. All right. So the next question, what's something that no one knows about you?
Look, I got a heads up about this question and I thought about it and I thought, I can't think of anything that no one knows about me, because I'm a pretty open book. But there are probably a few things that only my family knows about me. Perhaps that only Penny knew about me when she was with us. I'm a hoarder. That was one that I thought. I'm very bad at throwing things away, which goes pretty well with sort of being a Green and sort of wanting to make wise use of resources. But it can be very frustrating for people that share a house with me, my son at the moment. So yeah, I like keeping things.
How old's your son?
He's 28, and he had been living away from home, but has come back to live with me for the time that we've been locked down, which has been lovely. So it's been really nice to have him around the house and somebody to give a hug, and he's cooking at the moment. Very good at that too.
Hopefully dinner will be ready after this event, huh?
That's the plan. So you might hear sort of a few kitchen noises in the background. That's
more than fine. Okay, so next question. What is your favourite colour?
Probably aqua blue, some greeny blue, the colour of the sea.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, but, sort of the colours that I'm wearing in my scarf actually are pretty close to that as well. I do like maroons and pinks and some deep reds as well.
And it's good to stay warm because it's been very cold lately.
Yeah, and I should say green, of course, as a green senator, but I actually not that fond of the colour as such. As a colour, I love it in nature, and I love all the various shades of green, but as a colour, no, it's not my favourite.
Okay, well, good. So we then have, describe your COVID-19 experience in 3 words.
Oh, lonely. Deep, and a learning experience, which is more than 3 words.
That's okay. There's 3 quite powerful sort of set of words, if you will. So that was the quick fire round, and I sort of like that because it sort of warms us up for the harder questions which are about to come. Now, before we get set into those, we've had a few people message in. We have Craig in the room. So he basically wanted to say, Janet, thank you for your dedication to service. And he's a huge supporter of yours. So thank you. And that's from Craig.
Thank you, Craig.
All right, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to submit them through the chat function, but let's get started on social media questions. So what are some of the tools that you've used for self-care during this time of global, I guess, stress?
Yeah, stress and the pandemic. There have been 2 really important things to me, and one has just been to really acknowledge and to work, particularly with my staff who have been working online as well, sort of working together to acknowledge that we just haven't been able to do everything that we can do in normal times. And so really naming that and validating that and saying, yep, we're all going to do the best that we can, but we're not going to be able to be as productive as in normal times. And that's been a really important thing, so that we've had these expectations of really supporting each other in that. And along with that, I've found that the whole experience, particularly in the first months, because it was all so different and new and scary, to be really exhausting. And I found myself needing a lot more sleep. So just allowing myself to sleep, not setting the alarm, and sleeping in until, at least, 8 o'clock most mornings, compared with my usual pattern of having to be up and about 6:30. So getting enough sleep's been a really important thing to me. Cool. And the second has been just really making the most of opportunities to get out of the house and exercise. And so going off on bike rides, going off like I did this afternoon for a walk along the Maribyrnong River, out in the beautiful sunset, sort of little bits of nature, and that's the inspiration of being out in the natural world. Even here in downtown Footscray, and exercise just lifts your mood immensely.
You actually said one earlier, just before we went live, your cat who was at your feet. So
yes.
Yes.
The cat's been really important, and particularly I've been really missing some physical contact with people. Like visiting my mother, who's 87, and not being able to hug her has been really, really difficult. And as I said, with my son being here, it's been really good having him here and having someone to hug. But having the cat to hug and to pat and to sit on my lap, even though she's really annoying a lot of the time as well, has been a really important part of my self-care. You're absolutely right.
All right, so next question. What is one lesson that you've learned from lockdown that you wish to share with others? So you've mentioned one about acceptance and I guess kindness towards your fellow staff. What about personally?
Look, personally, it's that we are actually resilient, and that we can cope with a huge amount of, I know some people cope better than others, but for all of us, we're getting, okay, there are those who are who are really struggling, but for most of us, we can get through it. And the bigger picture of learning is to stay optimistic, and because things change, and no one saw this coming, and then so many things that have happened, even though as a Green we've got a lot of suggestions as to what other things should be done to support people during the pandemic. But it's massive. The things that were impossible are now possible. You know, the level of support for people, you know, doubling New Start, for example, supporting people to be staying at work. All of these things, which previously our Conservative government has said, no, you can't possibly do that. And neoliberal economics absolutely driving everything. And now, because people's lives are at stake, things that were previously impossible are now possible. So that to me is a learning that, you know, never give up, because even though things look really, really, really grim, things can change, and you know, the unexpected can happen.
That's a really good point. And I actually, you know, have been thinking about, now that we're almost in week number 8, I never in my wildest dreams thought we would be going through something like this, let alone actually thriving. Like, you know, some people are struggling, but there are some people that are actually using this and thriving.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that, you know, we've got more time at home, which, you know, and again, but I know it's not everyone has got the privilege of sort of, you know, having a house that they love and they're comfortable in, and some people, home isn't a safe space for them. But for a lot of people, you know, for me, I've got time to be in my garden. I can go and talk to my chooks in the middle of the day. I can, you know, people have got more time to be going out and exploring their local neighbourhoods. And, you know, and even like this evening, I sort of bumped into a person, a fellow Footscray resident who I knew from 20 years ago. I hadn't seen probably for that long, and we, you know, stopped and had a chat for 5 minutes, which was really lovely.
It's always the small things as well, the eye connection. Obviously, you can't sort of pat shoulders or hug, but yeah, what you're saying, 100% spot on. All right, so next question. What changes would you like to see at state and federal level as a result of lessons learned from this pandemic? That was social media.
Yeah, look, I think we've got, it's what this pandemic has showed up is it's exacerbated inequality. And the people that are struggling, you know, the people who haven't got a safe house, you know, a home, people who are already, you know, probably before the pandemic were struggling with relationships that weren't as good, but weren't able to get support, you know, for dealing with family violence, for example. And then having been, you know, cooped up, the increase in family violence has been, you know, really, really concerning. And so I think what this pandemic has shown is that there's been more support for people, but there still needs to be even more to be really addressing the issues of inequality in our society. And I mean, and there still have been people left behind, you know, the people on temporary work visas, international students, people with disabilities. You know, the disability support pension hasn't gone up, for example. And so there are a lot of extra things that should be done. And then the other thing is the things that we have learnt. I mean, going back to the fact that, you know, how people have commented on, you know, having cleaner cities with less traffic and people discovering bikes. It's just really a pointers to some of the things that we should be investing in, so that some of the benefits of, yeah, the building community, having, you know, for example, really good bike and walking infrastructure and public open space, has been things that are, you know, things that we should be investing in. Here's Trieste, the cat.
I love your cat.
Yeah.
What's its name?
Trieste.
Beautiful.
After the Italian city. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So the next question that we have, and we do have one submitted in by Craig, so we'll move on to that one next. How can we and this is a really good one, how can we counter health disinformation and conspiracy spread through social media platforms such as Facebook or Twitter?
And it's a really hard one, because it's really hard to do. I think it's, I mean, we know that the things that people listen to are the things that they hear from people they trust, and sort of, and they hear from their peers. And so I think I really think it comes down to all of us, that if you see something on Facebook that you know is, you know, just totally untrue, to call it out, and particularly to call it out to people that you know may listen to you. And I mean, we all get information. The information we listen to the most is what we hear from people that we trust. And so everybody has got those relationships with other people that they trust. And I think it's important for us to, to be making sure that we are we can help and be spreading accurate information and scientifically validated and really authentic, the right information.
Good call. So we've got 2 questions coming up, and I think they're both pretty good. So let me just go and read up. It's quite a long question, so just bear with me. All right, so the question is from Craig. For people that believe in kindness, community, inclusion, equity and unity with the environment are critical to be the future of our country, how do we work with our politicians and workplaces to highlight these priorities are just as important as economic priorities? How do we drive commitments from them to work hand in hand, including building better partnerships with those more conservative leanings? It's a big one.
Big question. That's right.
Great.
I think it's just commit yourself to doing that in whatever way you can. For me, I am motivated initially by, primarily by environmental concerns, but also for human rights and social justice, and a whole range of different things, decided that the Greens were my vehicle to be getting that message across. For other people, it's working with other community organisations. I think the most critical thing is actually to feel empowered to take action yourself, and not to feel that we've got this impossibility of change. And that can be hard for people to actually feel that their voice is being listened to. But my favourite quote in the whole world is the Margaret Mead one, that never doubt that a small group of people can change the world, and it's the only thing that ever has. And just to have that sense of personal empowerment and to be taking action, to be doing it with other people, and to be doing it in a way that is also supporting yourself, and that is sustainable for yourself as well. And enjoy taking that action as well. And certainly, so many people who feel frustrated about all of the problems of the world have said that, the best thing that they ever did was to, take that first step of actually taking action, because you feel much more hopeful when you're actually taking action and doing something.
Good call. Now we've got Jackie, who's got a question for you. Christina Keneally has been very vocal about reviewing migration policy from both numbers and focusing on jobs for Australians. What's your take on this?
Oh, it's dog whistling. It's just racism, and it's really, really worrying. And that she, as a senior Labor person, is doing that. And we've got to call it out. And the fact, last week when we went back for 3 days in the Senate, One Nation had this horrible debate that there's a time every afternoon in the Senate where we get to spend an hour on a matter of public importance, and One Nation put up this motion to be debated, which they won. That we have a ballot to decide which we get to debate, and they won the debate, and they were using Christina Keneally's words to debate their racist views. And so, we've just got to call it out.
Thank you for submitting that question, Jackie. So we'll go back to the social media questions. Something that's quite close to my heart is mental health and mental health within queer space. After a 48 million boost, do you feel the federal government is finally starting to take mental health seriously?
Oh, look, they're starting, but they're still not doing anywhere near the level of support that's needed. And even with the extra resources being put into mental health, it's still a struggle for organisations that are working with people with poor mental health to get the resources they need. I met with Joe Ball from Switchboard last week, and Joe was telling me that, they are still waiting to see whether their application to be getting extra funding under the Community Visitors Scheme to be supporting older LGBTIQ people they're still waiting on the outcome of that. They are still waiting to see whether they're getting extra income to support the fact that they're now having to employ paid people rather than volunteers to be running the QLife phone service. So, if the federal government was really serious about supporting mental health, they would be funding it to the level that's needed, and it's still only a fraction of what's needed. Yet at the same time, they're still giving subsidies, massive subsidies to the fossil fuel companies. They're still letting millionaires get away with paying no tax. We can afford to do it. We've got it's just a choice as to who gets the benefits and who gets the rewards in our society. And currently, the people that are at the bottom of the pecking order are still, really not getting what we as a caring society should be able to provide them.
I think for us, in terms of the questions that we've got, we're sort of out of them. So I'm going to sort of pull a few that I think are quite important. I actually went over to Berkeley Square, which is a shopping centre just near your office in Brunswick, here in Victoria. And I was there with my housemate, and I guess I started to feel a little bit anxious about being out in public. And it's something I think, when we're starting to plan for return to work, how was it for you returning to the Senate after all of the things that have happened in community across, Australia and the world?
I really enjoyed it, and in fact, more it was because there was a sense that so much of what, as a senator, my job is to be a campaigner and be an advocate, and to use the platform of the Senate to be able to advocate. It's frustrating, at times when I'm there in Canberra, because as Greens, we are saying things that are, always diametrically opposed to what the government is saying. And so sometimes I can get really frustrated with being in Canberra and saying, the work that I'm doing in Melbourne and from my office and supporting people and campaigning on stuff is more important and certainly more satisfying than the work that happens in Canberra. But being back there in Canberra was, because it felt so normal, and it felt that, right, this is where we should be. And just having those interactions with people, it was, I found it really a very positive experience. There was, of course, always the worry of, here we're bringing people in from right across the country, and who knows, it's exactly the sort of situation where you could have a COVID outbreak. And so, every time I was, opening doors, the big heavy doors that you got to go through in the Senate, and you think, I hope that they've been disinfected recently, But I haven't heard as yet that there were any outbreaks related to bringing all those people together in Canberra. But it's just going to be something that we're going to have to live with as to how we can have gatherings safely in the future, because, this pandemic's not going to stop anytime soon. And I think we've just got to learn to do things differently. And whether it's, having smaller groups that come together rather than, having thousands of people that come together, I think we're going to have to, work our way through as to how to be able to still bring people together, even if it's without the hugging and the shaking hands and everything else, to be able to do things that are really best done face to face, and do them in as safe a way as possible.
And you've mentioned that you've had some ups and downs. Has there been any positives apart from, you've mentioned going for walks, you've mentioned, connecting with your son who's moved home for a little bit. Have you taken up any new hobbies?
No, I've actually been really busy. So unfortunately, no, I've had plenty of time in my garden, so reinforced those. I have actually had a bit of time sort of reading, and actually reading books, because one of the things is, because all of my work life is online, there's no way that I could actually do anything on my computer or my iPad that sort of, feels like it's relaxation. So basically, I know that if I'm going to relax, I've just got to shut the computer up completely, and so and pick up the book.
What are you reading?
A book called Flight Lines, about migratory birds by Andrew Darby. So yes, which is great. But in my 3 words as to how I describe what my experience was, and I said deep was one of them. I think I have had plenty of time for reflection, and certainly going through this time without Penny by my side has been really difficult. And so the compounding losses of having lost my partner Penny 8 months ago, and then to be at home, without her, means plenty of time for thinking. I've actually been seeing a counsellor as well, getting some grief counselling as well, and that's been really powerful also. So a lot of time for reflection and thinking about what the meaning of life is, which is big, and it's good. Although I have actually made a resolution too that which I was sort of thinking about. In fact, this is something that not many people know. So, going back to the very first question of what people don't know about me, is that I've decided that I've toyed in the back of my mind but hadn't named it, that I want to write a book. So my intention is to write a book, sort of a memoir about pennies in my lives. I don't know how long it's going to take, but
that's a really great intention. That's really cool. I'd definitely love to read that. We've got one final question from Craig. All right, so I'm just going to read this word for word. So Janet with the Greens, leader Richard D. Natali, leaving politics. What is one, the quality they should bring to the role, and two, what is their biggest challenge?
Sorry, so it's for the person taking over from Richard, I think.
So what Craig means? Question is the quality. What kind of qualities do you think they could bring to the role, or what should they have? And what is their biggest challenge to the party?
Well, certainly the qualities, I think, for all of our Greens MPs, and I think for any representative, it's got to be this balance of actually being a better listener than a talker. And which is the inverse of what people think about when they think of a politician, who are always talking at you. But I think to be a good representative, and particularly to genuinely be there representing all of society and people who are often the voiceless, actually listening is more important. So being a good listener and actually knowing then, sort of along with that you don't know everything yourself. So that's humbleness as well. But you've got to combine that with, in order to survive in politics, and perhaps this is the challenge, is that balancing that humbleness and that ability to listen with surviving in what can be a pretty adversarial world. And you've got to have a bit of, you've got to have enough of an ego to be able to survive. But sort of getting that balance right, I think is the biggest challenge that our politicians face. Plus, I mean, there are all sorts of other ones, is that, just staying resilient and staying optimistic, because it's getting changed. And, basically we've got, what I want to be doing, and what as Greens we want to be doing, is we want to be tipping the system upside down. We need massive change to be getting a more equal, more fair, more just, more sustainable society. And that means the big power, who's got the power in our society needs to change. And so that's a big job. And one of the things I've actually reflected on myself over the last month is the sense of, it's hard to feel that you're making progress in it. But you've just got to keep on keeping on and be ready to pass the baton over when you've done your bit of the job onto somebody else, and know that this is a big project that we're all in together. And, it's going to take some time, but that doesn't mean that we give up. We've just got to keep on working on it.
Great. That's a really good answer. Thank you. And thank you to Jackie and both Craig, and for everyone on social media to submit your questions. Now, a little bit of a wrap up. Tonight is a little bit bittersweet. It is the finale of the Mindfulness Sessions in terms of guest speakers. During this time, we've had some really awesome guest speakers come along. So I'm going to read them out. So we had Joe Ball, CEO of Switchboard. We had Dina Curie, who was a performer. Celine Innes. There are so many ways I could describe her, but I've written down here: spiritual priestess, community leader, and all-around beautiful soul. We've also had yourself, Janet, and I honestly thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. The virtual catch-up session, there is one more of those next week, and all of these have been created to try and connect us in a time of, feeling less connected because we can't see each other face to face. Final question for you, Janet, and also maybe directed at your cat. Any final words for anyone here or anyone out there in sort of their day-to-day travels during COVID?
Sorry.
Did we break up?
No. So, were you asking whether I had any questions, or did
no,
anybody
I
else?
was also saying for anyone out there who is actually watching, for anyone walking around just on the street who may then catch this on replay, what's your advice for coping with COVID or potentially being alienated away from other people?
Right. Okay. To remember that although we are physically distancing, in fact, we are not socially distancing, and to reach out and to connect with people in whatever way you can, whether it's, chatting with your neighbour when you're at the letterbox, going out for a walk and catching up with somebody, or using all of these amazing online technologies to catch up, to reach out and know that we are all in this together, and we're all connected and all getting through it together.
And the one thing I'm definitely hearing you say loud and clear is that a small group, or one person can make a big change. So think about what you really want to do and make it happen.
That's right.
Awesome. Well,
don't give up.
You definitely don't give up. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for everyone there in the room. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you all soon. Love you all.
Thanks, Morgan. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.